My name is Andrea Janes, and I am a writer of ghost stories. I am also a tour guide. I work for Dr. Philip Schoenberg's Ghosts of New York, ghostsofny.com if you want to buy tickets. And I got into the whole tour guiding thing actually in 2009 when there was a under-celebrated quadricentennial celebration here in New York City. Nobody knew this, or very few people knew this, and very few people cared, but it was the 400th anniversary of Henry Hudson's sail up the Hudson River, which occurred in 1609. So I got very excited and started geeking out about like Dutch colonial history and New York City history, and I was taking a ton of tours and going to all these free events, and all of a sudden I was like, I could lead people around the city and tell them exciting historical facts. And I took my tour guide's exam license. Any guide in the city has passed a comprehensive 150-question, 2-hour exam, which asks some historical questions. So I got my license. We tend to get, on an average Saturday night on our West Village tour, for example, we may get 25 people. Last night there were over 100 people, so we had several tour guides and staggered tours, but we'll get, on average, 5 times more people in October than we do at any other time of the year. And it's not unusual to have a group be minimum of 16 or 20 people, and then again the maximum number of people we'll have is about 25, so we'll split up any groups that are bigger than that. We have the Lower East Side tour, we have a Lower Manhattan tour called Ghosts of the City, we have an Upper West Side tour, we have an East Village tour and a West Village tour, and they're all incredible and each has their own kind of different personality. So depending on what part of the city you're interested in and what kinds of histories you're interested in, we do incorporate a lot of culture, geography, and history into the ghost stories for context. So really depending on what you're interested in, you'll want to pick your tour based on that. But they're all good. I started working for a food tourist company, and every time, I guess that kind of ghost story writer in me kind of came out, but every time I would walk by Washington Square Park on my tours, I would always be pointing out things that were, well, putting people off their food. Macabre facts like, do you know there's a potter's field with 20,000 corpses buried, beneath us, and there was Bope's Library where there were 7 suicides in 2002, and oh, here's the Hangman's Elm where convicted criminals were hung before being buried in the pit in the potter's field. And then eventually I was like, you know what, I think I should be doing ghost tours. I have been interested in ghosts and ghost stories ever since I was a child. I had like children's books with ghost stories in them. I would pore over the illustrations and terrify myself, and I would look for ghosts in my basement. I love ghost stories forever and ever and ever, and when I started writing, it just felt like something that came very naturally to me. Every time I would write a story, like I never wanted to have a romance in it or a hero in it. I always wanted there to be like, a corpse in it. Well, I wrote a book of ghost stories, and they're fictional stories, but some of them have basis in New York City historical fact. Like, for example, one of the stories is based on the murder of Elma Sands, Julie Elma Sands, who was killed in what is now Soho at Spring and Green Streets. And she was killed and stuffed in a well in December of 1799. She was murdered, presumably by her fiancé, Levi Weeks. He got off scot-free, incidentally. Her body was discovered in early January, stuck in this well, frozen, with her firm muff, that was the thing that you put your hands in to keep them warm, floating at the top of the well. And so I was inspired by that and created this whole ghost story around it. So every story in my book either has a grain of truth or some element of New York City history or legend in it, or just a New York City setting. Except one which is set in Montauk, and I wrote when I was on holiday. I'm on the fence as to whether ghosts exist or not, because I have never seen a ghost. I've written about them and read about them and talked about them and told stories about them, but I've never ever seen anything, an apparition, or heard anything. I've seen a teacup move itself across the table. Never.